Welcome to the farm, where you can roll your windows down. Baby, take my arm. I ain't hearing nothing, such a beautiful sound. We can take the tractor down the road.
Good morning. My name is Blake Bennett, and I want to welcome you to the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture virtual field tour today. This virtual field tour will allow you to step right into the field with us to explore a range of issues impacting soybean production in Arkansas. This educational program is being funded by the Arkansas Soybean Promotion Board through checkoff funds provided by Arkansas soybean farmers. While you're watching the program today, you may want to jot down any questions or ideas you may have, and at the end of the field presentation, you can ask your questions directly to University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension scientists. So let's get out to the field. You won't even have to get your hands dirty.
Thanks, Blake. We appreciate that intro. I'm Karen Ballard with the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture. Welcome to the field and the farm. Joining me in the field is Shannon Davis of Davis Farms from Bono, Arkansas. We're so glad that you're joining us from all four corners of the state. This is memorable. We're stepping out here. This is reality TV Arkansas style. So expect a few bloopers. We don't have a teleprompter telling us what to say. It's the real deal. And we're so excited that you're a part of that. I'd like to jump in and let you meet the farmer. So Shannon, thank you for welcoming us to your field. And so is this just another lazy day at the field or what's going on here?
No, we're pretty busy this morning. We're in the process of harvesting some rice over behind us there. We started yesterday evening. We've got up this morning hauling some loads off to the riceland to get the loads emptied up for the bring back and start cutting the rest of the field today, and waiting on the beans to get ready to harvest in a couple of weeks. So hopefully they'll be ready by the time we get through with their rice crop. This particular farm is my great-grandfather's farm. I'm a fifth generation farmer in this area, and this is one of the farms that he and his family have improved over the years, and I had the opportunity to take it on and rent it from my uncle whenever he retired. So I guess it's up to me now to take it forward and make it more profitable and more beneficial to agriculture.
Well, we just learned earlier in the program that there are 17 schools that are joining us, over 400 students, and a lot of them never been on a soybean farm or in a field. So why should those 400 students care about soybean farming? Why is soybean and soybean farming important to Arkansas?
Well, soybeans is just an integral part of the overall agriculture economy of the state, which is one of the major driving forces of our state. And soybeans plays a big role in that through providing food sources for our livestock and poultry industries in the state, as well as the byproducts being used for things such as soy diesel or plastics and other paints, plastics and waxes and candles and different sorts of industrial items that the soybeans are used for in the process, as they're processed.
So soybeans can be used for food, human
fuel,
food, fuel, and feed.
And feed, yes.
So it covers all the bases. So
Yes.
how much money does that mean to Arkansas economy every year?
I think some numbers I've seen is approximately $10 billion.
$10 billion. I mean, that's massive. Never would have thought it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not really a farm girl. I know you couldn't tell. But reality TV would never be reality TV unless there's something a little personal that we find out about you.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? So
This is that surprise question you didn't tell me about.
Question.
Okay.
So tell us, Shannon, how did you get into farming? How did you decide that you were going to do this as a career?
Well, like I said, I've grown up on this farm as a little kid, and went to college and got a undergraduate degree in zoology. Thought I was going to be an eye doctor, and then I decided that wasn't really the path that I was really suited for. So I looked into environmental science, trying to bridge in that gap between the environmental sciences and agriculture, working through chemical runoff and degradation studies in rice, and just decided this is where my calling was, and I just stayed with it and trying to make the most out of this opportunity I have.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a really good point, that many of you sitting in your classrooms today may think that if you're really interested in science, that medicine is your only option as a career. Sure, medicine's a great career, but agriculture needs you. So keep that in mind. We're joined in the field also today by a scientist who works in agriculture, Dr. Terry Kirkpatrick. Dr. Kirkpatrick works for the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture as a nematologist, and his training is in plant pathologist. But those are big words. So Dr. Kirkpatrick, exactly what is a nematologist?
Well, Karen, thanks a lot for the introduction, and I'm glad you asked. Ologists of any kind, if you got ology behind your name, your professional title, it tells you a couple of things about that person. The first one is they study one particular area and they study it very deeply. Bacteriologists, for example, study bacteria. Zoologists study animals. Nematologists study nematodes. All right, now we'll talk a lot about nematodes here in a minute, but the other thing that in my experience most ologists have in common is, frankly, they'll bore you to death and put you to sleep in a heartbeat. And I may not be any exception in this virtual classroom, but I would like to start with you guys giving me a promise. As we go through this, if you feel that urge to nod off and kind of slump, do it in a safe manner, because this is our maiden voyage and I don't want to be the one responsible for an emergency room call for anybody that fell out of their chair and got hurt. All right, let's talk about nematodes a little bit. Nematodes are roundworms. They are the second most numerous group of organisms on the planet. The only group of organisms that are more numerous than nematodes are insects. All right, so we're talking about this giant phylum that occupies pretty much all niches. Everywhere on the face of the planet you go, including in the soil in this soybean field, you can find nematodes. For example, nematodes are the only multicelled animals that are found living in the hot springs in Yellowstone National Park. They're the only ones that can stand that kind of heat and survive. Nematodes are found in pineapple fields in Hawaii. They're found in oceans. They're found in tropical rainforests are especially a place where they're found, because the weather is the weather is warm. There are no winters. These guys are found in abundance. Like I say, they occupy virtually every niche on the face of the planet, including the intestinal tracts of whales and dogs, and sometimes even infecting humans, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Now, the world of nematodes is real broad. A particular group of nematodes within that phylum are parasitic. And I'm guessing you guys have, in your biology, your basic biology, you all know what a parasite is. Simply, it's an organism that gets its food and lives on another organism called a host. All right, nematodes are pretty much, the parasitic ones are also pretty much ubiquitous. That's a 50-cent word for everywhere. There are parasites, for example, of the insect parasites like ticks, chiggers, some of these things that you guys know about, you're probably real familiar with. Mistletoe in oak trees is a good parasitic plant. Leeches are parasites. You get the picture. These guys are kind of nasty little organisms, and as we get into soybeans, we're going to find that that's no exception. You may be really kind of familiar with parasitic nematodes already and you don't know it. If any of you have any pets, dogs as pets, and you live in Arkansas, the chances are, if you value your dog's life, that you regularly treat for heartworms. Heartworms are actually parasitic nematodes that are transmitted by mosquitoes from dog to dog. Left untreated, they'll kill the dog. They just multiply in the heart and plug the heart up, and there goes your pet. So if you value Fido, treat for heartworms. We're lucky in the United States that we don't have many human parasitic nematodes to deal with. We have good sanitation, we have good water treatment facilities, so we really don't have to deal with the medical issues ourselves. That's not the case though in a lot of the rest of the world. Many of our developing countries where water treatment and sanitation are not very good, certainly in the tropical areas where there's no winter to kind of knock the nematode populations back down, these guys have to deal with medicinal issues, and there are a lot of medical parasitic nematodes. Kind of the poster child, just as an example, is the guinea worm. And the guinea worm is a nematode that starts as an egg in stagnant ponds where they're not treated. A person drinks the water, the egg hatches, the little microscopic nematode migrates through the body winds up in the subcutaneous layers under the arms and legs, and then it grows to about the size of a piece of spaghetti. So you can imagine how nasty that might be, having a piece of spaghetti crawling around under your skin. Well, urban legend says that the medical symbol that you guys probably are familiar with, if you go to a hospital, it's over the door or out in front on the sign, what is it? It's a snake around a stick. Well, urban legend says that's really a guinea worm, because in the old days, the treatment was actually to find one of those worms under the skin, make an incision with a knife, reach in and pull the tail out, and then wrap it out over time, just crank it out on a matchstick. There you go. Maybe that is a guinea worm. If you guys get a chance, Google guinea worm. It's a pretty cool life cycle, unless you happen to be the guy that's infected. All right, now, what about plant parasitic nematodes? That's going to be the topic of the rest of this discussion this morning. Soybeans, cotton, corn, it doesn't matter. Any plant crop has a set of nematodes that can be an issue. All of the plant parasitic nematodes are microscopic, and essentially all that we're going to deal with in agriculture live in the soil. Not all. There are a few foliar nematodes, but most are subterranean. In fact, I just dug up a little soil. This handful of soil right here contains thousands of nematodes. And that's the case anywhere on the face of the earth that you want to go. You dig up soil, you've got nematodes. All right, now, I've talked about the bad and the ugly nematodes. And I would be remiss before we get into soybean nematodes if I didn't tell you that out of that huge phylum that we know about, only about 10–15% are really detrimental. The vast majority of nematodes are beneficial nematodes. Even those that live in the soil, most of them are beneficial. They're involved in breaking organic matter down into its elemental form so the plants can take it back up. A lot of them eat bacteria and fungi in the soil. There are some that actually are predaceous and they eat other nematodes. An area of research that has been really hot for about the last 30 years in nematology has been entomopathogenic nematodes. There's another 50-cent word for you. Meaning entomo meaning insects, pathogenic meaning pathogenic. So these guys actually infect insects. And there are numerous commercial products now that are available that are actually living nematodes that can be applied to soil or plants, or even chicken houses for fly control, and the nematodes parasitize the insect pests, providing an extremely environmentally appropriate pesticide. All right, now, plant parasitic nematodes. These guys, all the plant parasites have one thing in common. They all feed with a stylet. All right, now you know from earlier they're roundworms, so that's the other thing they have in common. That's why they're in the phylum Nematoda. But they feed with a stylet. A stylet is a hollow spear. Now you all are probably familiar with stylet feeding organisms. If you've been fishing lately and the mosquitoes were bad, then you know about stylets. This is the same principle. A nematode actually uses its stylet to penetrate a root cell and then pumps in salivary secretions into that cell. In other words, they spit into the cell. And the nematode spit contains a lot of enzymes that mush up the cellular contents of the cell. And when these guys have basically, when the cellulitic enzymes, and all these enzymes have mushed up the cell contents into a really nice cytoplasmic smoothie, then the nematode sucks the smoothie back up, and that's how it feeds. It goes into the digestive system and is used like any other food in any other organism. Now, before we go any further, I thought it'd be really nice. All these guys are microscopic, but because we're kind of doing techno stuff today, I wanted you to see some nematodes. So here's a video of some plant parasitic nematodes under a microscope. This magnification is about 100x. You see these guys moving around? You see the stylet? Can you pick out the stylet in the anterior or the front end of that nematode? That's how they feed. All right, now, one of the things that I kind of want to bring out now, because we're going to talk a lot about it, is the specifics of soybean nematodes. And there are several types that can be very damaging to soybean crops in Arkansas. But I want to focus on the most damaging and the most widespread, and this is an organism called the root knot nematode. Root knot nematodes belong to the genus Meloidegae. They are also pretty much ubiquitous. There's a root knot nematode, there's a Meloidegae species for just about every one of about 3,000 plant hosts. So they're around. They cause galls to form. When they spit into the cell and mush up the cell contents, as they're feeding, it doesn't kill the cell. It basically makes the nuclei rapidly divide and the cell to overgrow and to cause galls or knots to form on the roots. Now, how bad can a few little microscopic nematodes be? It's a good question. Shannon is lucky because this field here is not a nematode problem field. While there are a lot of nematodes in the soil, most of them are beneficial nematodes. But right down the road, his neighbor does have a nematode problem field. We flew over it the other day and took a picture. I think you can see pretty well, without anybody pointing anything out, the degree of damage in this field. All right? This is not a field that you probably want to pay the mortgage on. All right, we went down there and actually filmed this a couple of weeks ago when there were still leaves on the soybeans, and talked about them a little bit closer. So let's go there and walk with me in this video. A really poor plant such as these here, this you can see I'm kind of in an area of the field that is shorter than normal and kind of chlorotic or yellow. The soybeans should look like this. And so you can see what the nematodes do. They don't kill the plant, they prolong the agony season long, but they basically get in the farmer's pocket. One of the reasons that we call this nematode the root knot nematode is because it makes galls on the roots when it infects the plant. You can see this. Nutrients and water are not going to go in or up through the plant efficiently as they would in an uninfected root system. Root knot nematodes are real common in this state. And left untreated or uncontrolled or unmanaged, they can be pretty darn expensive. As a final gesture in that field we were just in, I actually just randomly pulled up a plant that did not have root knot and one adjacent to it that did, and I picked the pods off, the bean pods. And I think this pretty much tells the story right there. You can see what can happen if these nematodes are bad in a field. All right, now, how would a farmer, how do we know that Shannon does not have nematodes, other than the way the crop grows, of course? And how do we know if a field does have nematodes, since these are microscopic guys and they're in the soil? Well, very simply, you got to get them out of, you got to catch them, and then you got to look at them under a microscope, which means you've got to sample the field, the soil in the field, and then you've got to extract those through a nematode laboratory that specializes in nematology. Most farmers use a piece of equipment like this, just a simple, it's called a sampling tube or a T-handle sampling tube. All right, this little device right here, it costs probably $60 and it can save a farmer a whole lot of money. To sample this field out here, for example, we would walk through the field. We just randomly would take samples. You see, we get cores, probably 20 cores out of the field, mix those together, send them to a nematology laboratory. The laboratory would extract the nematodes through a pretty involved process, get them out into water, identify the nematodes, and then report back to the farmer what they have and really what to do about it. Now, the Division of Agriculture in this state maintains the Arkansas Nematode Diagnostic Laboratory. It's the place any citizen of the state can send soil to get nematode assays. It's located in Hope, Arkansas. It's my laboratory. So if any of you guys, and it's available to anybody. It doesn't matter whether you grow soybeans or whether you grow a garden in the backyard. If you want to know if you've got a nematode problem in your garden, send in a nematode sample. It's that simple. Okay, guys, that pretty much wraps up the discourse on nematodes. I'm hoping that you guys have been texting in questions about nematodes or soybeans or whatever you wanted to ask. I've kind of asked a group of experts here to come together to help me answer the questions. And I'm going to let these two gentlemen right here introduce themselves. You already know Shannon.
I'm Ray Benson. I'm a county extension agent in Mississippi County.
I'm Randy Klepeczka. I'm County Extension Agent at Jackson County, headquartered at Newport.
All right. Okay. Bring on the questions.
All right, Dr. Kirkpatrick, and thank you to everyone else joining him in the field to answer these great questions. We've got several for you. The first one is from Caddo Hills High School. They asked, what is the percentage of Arkansas soybean crops that are damaged each year by nematodes?
Okay, I'll probably do that one since I'm the nematologist. Rough estimates say that about somewhere between 10 and 15% of the 3.6 million acres of soybeans we have in the state have got a severe nematode problem. So I don't have my calculator, but you guys can figure how many miles, how many acres that would be. Now, the yield reduction can be anywhere from 10 to 30 bushels on each acre, and soybeans are what, Shannon, $12?
They were earlier in the spring. They're more around $9 right now.
Okay, $9, say $10 an acre. So you figure it out. They're pretty expensive.
All right, now in Hellstern, those Hellstern Heroes at middle school asked, as well as someone else, how do you get rid of those harmful nematodes? How do you get them out of your field?
When do you guys want to take that one?
Yeah, it's common to rotate to a crop that's not susceptible to nematodes. That would reduce the population. In some cases, there are some chemical treatments that can be applied, but generally, the most effective way is to rotate to a crop that nematodes can't survive on.
Now, and those Alma Airedales want to know, can the good nematodes eat the bad nematodes?
Yeah, they can. I mean, it's a predator-prey type of a thing, just like any place else in nature. The only difference is they're restricted by the soil, so it's a lot harder. Most of the nematodes, the good nematodes that eat the bad nematodes, have to more or less wait for the bad nematodes to come within, not sight, obviously, because you can't see through soil, but they can smell them. And so they smell them and then they go to them and attack them.
Whoa, definitely some Hunger Games stuff going on with that. All right. Okay, well, what other plants can nematodes harm besides soybeans?
Well, there's numerous. As Terry mentioned in the beginning of his talk, really any crop that we have, that we grow, is potentially infested with nematodes. You know, soybeans and cotton are probably the number 1 and 2 that we deal with in our row crop industry, but any really row crop can get infested, and vegetables are very prone to be infested with nematodes. So really, pretty much any crop we grow is potentially infested.
Now, those Alpina leopards want to know what yield reduction occurs in a nematode-infested field like the one you showed us.
Well, like I said, if you're looking at a 20-30% yield reduction, if you're at 50 bushels an acre, you're going to lose 10 to 20 bushel an acre off of that crop. And You know, it's like I said, at $10 an acre,
That's a lot
that's
of
$100 an acre.
That's $100 an acre off 1,000 acres. That's a lot, and we got 3.6 million acres in the state. So,
And Taylor High School wants to know what type of plants, if any, are not susceptible to nematodes.
I don't think there probably is a plant species that's not susceptible to some nematode. As far as I know, every plant species has a complement of nematode parasites. But there are some that we use in, as mentioned a minute ago, in rotation with soybeans that are not susceptible to the ones that go to soybeans. Grain sorghum is an excellent rotation because root knot nematodes just don't do well on grain sorghum. Rice is another because the root knot nematodes don't do well in flooded soil. Drives the oxygen out, kills the nematodes. So there are some that are not host of specific nematodes, but every plant species has a nematode or two that they need, you know, that can parasitize them.
Can I say something about
Yes,
that?
please.
In all of the universities' breeding program, they have scientists that deal with development of new varieties, and a lot of their selection process is to look at plants that are a little bit more resistant or a little bit tolerant of nematodes. So they're continually trying to develop new varieties that would be less susceptible to a nematode problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Pocahontas asked, what is the estimated cost to rid a field? Now, we talked about whether or not you can, but how much does it cost?
Well, who wants to do that? Anybody? I guess I'll do
the expert.
All right, okay, okay.
Rotation.
Rid is the wrong term to use because nematodes are not like insects. They don't have legs or wings, they're not mobile. So they have evolved mechanisms to survive that are more dealing with the ability to survive all kinds of adversity and to reproduce at high levels. So once you've got nematodes in a field, you're always going to have nematodes in that field. And all of our management strategies now are not to try to rid them from the field. Doesn't really matter whether you get rid of them or not. What it matters is that you keep that population density in that field below an economic level, which means low enough that it doesn't cost you any yield when you harvest the crop. And so all of our strategies go to that rather than getting rid of it. And as simple as just rotating to another crop or going to a resistant variety, it may cost very little. It's just a matter of changing what you do.
Okay, and what percentage of crops are destroyed by nematodes?
It's hard to estimate. Nematodes don't always destroy the crop. They just debilitate it. And a lot is going undocumented right now. So that's really a hard question. You get the prize for that one. I don't know the answer to it.
I'd say almost every field is at least affected some way. Maybe not enough that it would cost yield, but every field, almost 100%, have some problem,
issues.
maybe even just in a little bitty spot.
Right.
Why are there nematodes there if they're not beneficial?
It kind of is what it is. I mean, you know, they're there because they can't go anywhere else. So they're surviving there. And the soil is, okay, here's a definition. Dirt is under your fingernails. Soil is the biological medium that plants grow in and all of the microorganisms that are there exist in. And it exists not in a vacuum. It exists as an interrelationship of organisms, good ones, bad ones, and in between. One of the reasons the bad ones predominate in a soybean field is because there's no diversity there. We plow it up and we plant only soybeans. And so it favors those that are parasitic on soybeans, so they kind of rise to the top. And so it's just kind of standard ecology that's going on here in this soil.
Okay, and Alma asked, we're going to combine a couple questions here. So with the Davis farm being close in proximity to the infected farm, are his soybeans at risk from that infected farm? And to combine that, can agricultural practices spread the infection?
As Dr. Kirkpatrick said earlier, nematodes don't move a lot, so they kind of stay where they're at. But, you know, farmers move equipment from field to field, so, you know, soil can get on a tractor tire or any piece of equipment and move from field to field that way. So that would probably be the predominant way they would easily move from one field to another because, again, they don't move very readily on their own.
Yeah, Shannon, what precautions do you take not only against that field, but just sanitation on your farm, just kind of trying to keep unwanted things out anyway?
Well, a lot of times, like with rice, where you may have a field that has some red rice, which is an off type of, or a naturally occurring rice that's has a red grain as opposed to the white grain that we plant, that you get a deduction on your loads that you haul in. A lot of times we will combine our efforts to harvest those in a combined effort before we go into another field that may not have that plant present, to keep from that being translocated to a clean field. And it's similar to what you're talking about with the nematodes.
With nematodes, don't move
if you've
soil.
If you've got a piece of equipment that's working a field that does have a problem, you wouldn't want to go to a clean field. That would in turn inoculate that field with the nematodes that you're trying to work against.
Absolutely. Sanitation is the key.
Right.
How does weather affect nematodes, and about what is the lifespan of nematodes?
Okay, I can do that. Okay, weather impacts nematodes because they're all of them have an optimum temperature range. So if it's really cold, it shuts them down. If it freezes them in the soil, it kills them. Because it denatures the cells. The lifespan of a nematode is about more or less about 30 days. So every 30 days during the course of the growing season, when the temperatures are up, you got a new cycle coming on, and each one of them produces 1,000 offspring. So you can figure that one too. The log scale kind of goes sky high pretty quick.
Alpina asked another question. How many seasons of rice or grain sorghum are necessary to kill a nematode infestation?
Well, usually 1 year rotation will lower if you rotate to a crop that's not susceptible to nematodes, that 1 year will lower the numbers enough that you can probably rotate back to a crop and not have much problems. I would think that 2 years pretty well zeroes out the number.
It doesn't get rid of them, but it gets them low enough that it'll take them a long time to come back.
Can infected farms use their soybeans for industrial purposes so it's not a total loss?
Yeah, there's really no problem as far as the soybean itself. If it makes a soybean, a lot of times that crop is going to be damaged, and you may not produce a good soybean crop, or you may have small seeds, things like that. But I mean, any viable seed that is produced can be used for normal soybean purposes.
Yeah, it's not something that's going to be transmitted through the seed. It
Right.
stays with the soil.
Great. And last question. What are some job opportunities in agricultural science related to nematodes that these students might want to get involved in the future?
Well, the gamut is pretty broad. Certainly on the one end is farming in general, and agricultural, agribusiness deal with nematodes every day in producing their crop. So the professional agriculturalist is one. There's a whole industry on helping growers do a better job and be a more profitable job. There are companies that develop resistant varieties for farmers to use, as Ray said a minute ago, that are less susceptible, hence more profitable. There's a lot of research now going on in actually using nematodes as sentinel species as indicators of things like polluted environments and places like that. There are entomopathogenic nematodes that are being developed and released. Certainly the science of nematology. You can be an ologist like me if anybody's still awake, and want to pursue it. So it's a broad area.
And is there anything in particular they'd want to look into studying in college or in school to be able to do that?
Yeah, biology. Take the hard courses. Don't go get out of Chemistry 1 and Chemistry 2 and organic and all of those. Take them. If you're interested in science, science works on these principles. So go get a good fundamental science undergraduate education.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kirkpatrick, and all of your soybean crew. I'm going to turn it back over to Karen in the field.
Just want to say that we're so excited that you've joined us from around the state. You should have learned by now a lot about soybeans, a little bit about nematodes, how to take a soil sample, and that you may have a future in agricultural science and in Arkansas agriculture. Like Shannon talked about earlier, his interest was in environmental science. So all of these sciences go together to make sure that Arkansas agriculture is a sustainable natural resource. Blake's going to share with us how you can continue to be involved in this beyond our virtual field day. You can be involved by taking the online course, the Soybean Science Challenge course. We have a course for teachers and for students, and also to participate in the science fairs, the ISEF regional and state science fairs. The Arkansas Soybean Promotion Board sponsors cash prizes for the best project that supports Arkansas soybean production at all the regional science fairs, and $500 prize to the student at the state science fair. That's real money, folks. So in any of those disciplines, like Terry was talking about, any of those disciplines can support science, whether it's food science, agronomy, chemistry, engineering. There are all kinds of engineering applications that are necessary and important to support Arkansas agriculture. So check out the Soybean Science Challenge. There's lots of ways for you to be involved, and I'm going to pitch it back to Blake, who's going to tell you about those opportunities.
Hi, I'm Blake Bennett. I'm a fourth-generation farmer from Pocahontas, Arkansas. I'd like to personally invite you to learn more about the importance of soybean production to the Arkansas economy and the potential opportunities in science-based careers available to Arkansas students. The Soybean Science Challenge is a program for 9th through 12th grade students and teachers that includes online education and cash awards for student research at Arkansas ISEF affiliated regional and state science fairs. We often refer to soybeans as the miracle bean because there are many uses for human food, renewable fuel, and animal feed, but there's still a lot to learn. And that's where you come in. Each year, the Soybean Science Challenge provides cash awards to student researchers. If you love science, then you'll want to check out the Soybean Science Challenge.
Paid for by Arkansas soybean producers and their checkoff.
For more information, visit themiraclebean.com.